I like that. And now we see some actual footage of a helicopter flying around the Statue of Liberty. And we see New York City in the background, with the Twin Towers, of course. And LeVar in the voiceover says, "When it comes to welcoming immigrants into America, there is only one star. And here she is, the Statue of Liberty." Wow, very interesting segue. So the end of the book, the little girl was watching the stars come out, and now LeVar's saying that the Statue of Liberty is the main star when it comes to welcoming immigrants to America. Okay. He continues to say that it was one of the first things that immigrants saw when they came in. And then we see the statue completely covered in scaffolding, very much like the scaffolding we saw covering up the Ellis Island building. LeVar says she's being overhauled to prepare for her 100th birthday. I'm looking it up now. It says, the Statue of Liberty's 100th birthday was celebrated with a massive 4-day Liberty Weekend extravaganza from July 3rd through 6th, 1986. When did this episode air? June 26, 1986, so it was right before that. Like the week before. So this was definitely filmed in 85. LeVar said it's taking hundreds of people to get the Statue of Liberty back into shape. And one of those lucky people is his good friend AJ Analo. He says, let's go meet him on the job. I don't know if I pronounced his name right, but definitely AJ. Then we have a cool transition that kind of goes from the top of the screen down to the bottom as this elevator comes down. When I was little at first, I didn't realize that this actually was an elevator. Because when I think of elevators, I think of those things that have the automatic doors that slide sideways, and they have these buttons with the arrows and the numbers and stuff. But here it looks like this big cage that's coming down, and this guy is lifting up all these doors. He says hello to LeVar and shakes his hand, says, "You ready to go? Let's do it." And LeVar's wearing a hard hat. So AJ pulls down the doors once again, and it's red with this round symbol painted on the door. It's white with a black arrow pointing up. I don't know if that's actually what it's supposed to be, or if it's some kind of logo for the company that's made the elevator. I'm not sure. When I was a little kid, elevators were one of my absolute favorite things. I liked riding the elevators at the library, at the mall, at the hospital, every place. My favorite parts were the numbers on the buttons. I guess I liked numbers back then. I was a little disappointed that they didn't show the buttons for this elevator. I would have loved to have seen that, but it was still kind of cool to hear LeVar mention an elevator, because then he said, "As we rode up the elevator to the statue's base, I could see the repair work was well underway." At first I wasn't sure if he said statue's base or statue space. I guess both would kind of make sense. And LeVar is very amazed by the complicated web of pipes called scaffolding that surrounds Liberty. He explains that it makes it easy for the crew to reach any spot to be fixed. And at the age of 3, I was very amazed by that too. I thought it looked really cool. Looked like a really fun place to explore. And first LeVar looks at the gigantic toes of the Statue of Liberty. He says they're the biggest toes he's ever seen, and he even touches them. Then AJ points out a detail of the statue that some people miss. There's broken chains that represent freedom in the new land. And LeVar asks what's going on up at the top. AJ says that they're working on repairing a bunch of rust spots and skin damage, and they go on up to investigate. Now we see them climbing up the steps on the scaffolding, and this one shot right here looks straight down at this big metal plank that they're walking on, like a big bridge to the next part, and the camera points down so low that we can actually see the cameraman's shoes walking along for a quick second or two. At first I thought those were LeVar's hands, like he's crawling on the thing. He says, "This scaffolding is so huge, is it safe?" AJ says, "Yes, it sways a little, but it's safe." LeVar laughs. I don't know if that made him nervous or not. The main thing that this reminded me of when I was little was the Gymnasium at Universal Rocket and Fitness Center in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. The Gymnasium was a huge indoor playground with tunnels, slides, ball pits, cargo nets, ropes that you climb, and a big air-filled trampoline. In that great big pipeline structure maze, climbing around in that, I could see a similarity between that and what LeVar's doing here, climbing all this scaffolding on the Statue of Liberty. Like a great big structure that looks kind of like a maze. I remember watching this at the age of 3 and thinking that this looks like so much fun. I want to go there someday. Obviously that was impossible because it was already long gone by the time I was born. It was only up for like about a year or two. But that Gymnasium at Universal was one of my absolute favorite places growing up. In fact, I even wrote about it in my book, Meet Zoe Richards. I gave the gym a different name. I called it the Hickory Health Club, but the Gymnasium is exactly identical. Had a lot of fun drawing the illustrations for that book, especially the gymnasium scenes. And they come to a place where there's a great view of Manhattan. AJ says you can see the whole harbor from up there. And he points to the lady's arm stretched up through the scaffolding. And Liberty's holding the big torch of freedom. And LeVar notices that there's no flame on the torch. And AJ says the flame is being completely rebuilt. And they'll bring the new one upstairs later. In fact, part of the Wonder's birthday ceremony, they relit that torch. So I guess it used to light up originally, and then it burned out, and they restored it later. Then they dissolved in the next scene. Both LeVar and AJ have to kind of duck under one of the pipes as they walk along to where the statue's face is. And once again, we see the Twin Towers in the background. My goodness, the camera crew had no idea how meaningful that would be to be able to see those buildings all these years later. The first time I watched this, though, they were still around. It was the first half of 2001. And there's LeVar with his hand on the Statue of Liberty's chin. AJ says that not many people get to come up here. I wonder how the Reading Rainbow crew talks these people into letting them do this. LeVar said that AJ Ainala was one of his good friends. Was this somebody that he knew very well and he talked him into it? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out more in the credits towards the end. LeVar asks how high up they are. AJ says, about 300 feet up in the air right now. LeVar laughs. And then LeVar knocks on the chin, and then he says, wait a minute, she's hollow. When I was 3 years old, I didn't know what the word hollow meant. I thought it was a fancy way of saying hello. And the reason I assumed that was because, well, two reasons. When you knock on the door, the next thing that usually happens is when they open the door and you say hello. And on Little Bear, when they went to the mountains or to a cave and they were listening to their echoes, they would say, hello, and the echo would come back, hello. And as LeVar's knocking on the statue, there's a little bit of an echo inside, to which LeVar comments that the statue is hollow. But yeah, it wasn't until I was a little bit older that I knew that he meant hollow as in it seems empty inside, not hello. I think in some countries, different languages, hollow actually means hello, like hello. AJ says that the copper skin is wrapped around a steel skeleton. Copper, oh yeah, copper, because originally it wasn't green. It used to be like a copper, like the color of a penny, and then it became green as the years went by. If Watch the Stars Come Out, the book, takes place in the late 1800s, that means the statue would have been brand new. Because the 100th birthday was in 86, 1886 must have been when it was built. There's no way it could have turned completely green by, like, the 1890s, I wouldn't think. Maybe it did, I don't know, because it looked pretty green in the book. Yeah, looks green there. Like, even if it is kind of blending in with the foggy blue sky in the background, they would have made it a lot redder than that if it was copper color. But nope, looks green there in the book. So maybe it was colored copper at first, and then it became green like just a couple years later, and it's been that way ever since. Yeah, I'm looking at this chart here with color comparisons. It looks like the statue is already pretty green after 10 years. So maybe the book takes place in, like, the late 1890s. So yeah, the shiny copper reddish brown color didn't last very long. It was only shiny for like the first couple months, and then it was like a very dull brown for a while, and then it became green. All because of oxidization. Then LeVar asks about a hole in the nose, and AJ says it's from corrosion from the statue being there all those years in the harbor. And LeVar says, from the wind and the rain, like rust on a piece of metal. And AJ says, exactly. It's kind of interesting that the nose would get messed up in the wind and the rain after a while, because when you think about it, the same thing kind of happens to human noses. Like, if you spend too much time outside in the wind and the rain, after a while, you're probably gonna get a runny nose. Maybe human noses don't get corroded like the statues does, but probably gets a little bit red and scratchy after a while. And LeVar asks how they're going to fix it, and AJ says that they're going to replace pieces of the copper skin like a patch. And he also says that the rivets holding the skin together will be taken out one by one, replaced one by one. And then AJ says that he has to go back downstairs for a while, so he says to LeVar, I'll leave you up here with the lady and I'll be back. And they shake hands and say goodbye, and LeVar just stays right where he is with the camera crew and admires the gigantic face of the Statue of Liberty, enjoying himself standing right close to it.